BBC Radio.
6 Music.
You are now entering a parallel universe.
And wipe your feet on the way in.
Marc Riley, BBC 6 Music.
I can't get my head off the ground. As soon as I get my head round you, I come around catching sparks off you. And all I ever got from you was all I ever took from you.
Okie dokie, I am Marc Riley in Salford, whilst in Yorkshire we have got Mr. Bobby Hughes, and that was the Pixies and Head On, was it not, Bob?
It was, mate, yeah, cover of Jesus and Mary Chain. I mean, that was short and sweet, wasn't it? 2.5 minutes, I think.
Blink and you'll miss it.
Ooh, right, yeah, so we're looking at the NME here, 25th of May 1991. Obviously, Pixies in the news. Also in the news, Happy Mondays, who pulled out of the last 7 dates of their US tour due to illness and technical difficulties, it says here. Notice of the cancellations came after the Monday's marred support date with Jane's Addiction at Madison Square Garden. Ryder and the band reportedly arrived at the venue half an hour after they were due on stage and played for 22 minutes.
Oops.
Jane's Addiction's set, despite running just 2 minutes over time, landed the headliners with a union overtime penalty of $7,000, a small percentage of which the Mondays were asked to pay. In the meantime, Pills and Thrills and Bellyaches is currently on the periphery of the Billboard Top 100. I think on last week, we were doing, we were looking at sort of Shaun Ryder's renaissance, you know, with Black Grape and everything else. This is a few years earlier, but it really is all going to pot here, and you can see the end is nigh.
Well, Pills, Thrills and Bellyache was a big album, wasn't it?
It was,
I mean, that was their breakthrough, Kinky Afro and all that, and Dennis and Lois, funnily enough. So, they did kind of grasp defeat from the jaws of victory in a way.
They did. The Stone Roses have won the case brought against them by the record label Silvertone and have signed a long-time deal with Geffen, thought to be worth a cool $20 million. The legal battle, which had been raging in the High Court for 2 months, climaxed on Monday. Presiding Judge Humphreys declared their recording and publishing contracts with Silvertone Zomba entirely one-sided and unfair. The band weren't in court, but their delighted manager Gareth Evans, told the NME that the Roses have cleaned up. They were awarded £100,000 costs. In the meantime, they returned to the studio this week to record the follow-up to their Platinum 1989 debut LP. A spokesman for the band told the NME the single will be released as soon as humanly possible. And according to insiders, Ian Brown and co. already demoed enough material for a double album. Well, we know how that sort of panned out, didn't we?
Yeah, for sure.
Also in the news here, you've got Primal Scream follow up the success of last year's Loaded and Come Together, the new single, Higher Than the Sun, modestly described by the band's label Creation as the best record since Anarchy in the UK. released on June the 10th, featuring several different versions produced by Andy Weatherall and The Orb, as well as a guest appearance by Jar Wobble on bass. The group have also set up a special phone line on 0898 600 536 featuring the Orb mix. So this is obviously pre-internet. This is how you would get the cutting-edge news, wouldn't it? If you want to listen to something ahead of its time, you'd phone a phone number.
Definitely. I mean, I can't say I've ever done it, but yeah, somebody probably did.
Yeah, I haven't done it either. Teenage Fanclub released their first Creation single in July and back it up with a short UK tour. The Scottish guitar outfit, whose future has been the subject of much speculation over the last 4 months, have yet to reveal details of the tracks which will appear on their follow-up to last year's acclaimed God Knows It's True. This is, the first single I think was Star Sign, wasn't it? But
right.
they were just seen as this promising guitar band, and then a few months after this, of course, you get Bandwagon-esque, which was just a phenomenal record.
Yeah, it took them up several gears, didn't it?
It did. Never quite understood all that Big Star stuff, though.
Do you not like Big Star?
I do like Big Star, yeah, completely. But I didn't quite see it as a complete rip-off, which is a lot of the reviews hinted as such, didn't they?
Oh, I see what you mean. I mean, there probably was. It's fair to say there's probably some influence there, wasn't it? But I mean, the Fannies just sound like the Fannies, don't they?
They do. Anthrax, hip-hop fascinated skate thrashers even, release a cover of Public Enemy's Bring the Noise on June the 10th, featuring a storming cameo vocal by Chuck D. Guitarist Scott Ian said in a statement, "We've never put this stuff out before because we only ever did it to amuse ourselves, but so many people came up and asked us how they can get hold of tracks like Protest and Survive and Bring the Noise that we covered for fun. We decided to release them." It was an odd mix-up, this, but they got on particularly well, didn't they, Chuck D and Anthrax?
Yeah, I mean, and if you think about like Run DMC sampling Aerosmith and stuff like that, so there was a crossover with rock, and it had all the dynamics, didn't it? But nothing that you would necessarily look at each other and think, right, they're going to marry, but they did.
Yeah, absolutely. Had that intensity, definitely. And Tad, Seattle's largest thrash imports, follow up their well-received string of UK shows with 2 more gigs and a single scheduled for release in July. The group are currently touring Europe, plugging their lauded LP, 8-Way Santa, after which singer Tad will return to the States to start work on his film debut in Singles, co-starring with Matt Dillon and Bridget Fonda. Just unusual, isn't it? Tad, so many Seattle bands suddenly ended up on the map, but they were the ones that didn't quite make it for whatever reason.
Was he in that film?
I think he was, yeah, but there were a lot of people in that film. A lot of people on the soundtrack, certainly.
Right, okay. Well, I mean, Tad, they famously toured the UK, didn't they, with Nirvana, lower on the bill.
Yeah, that's right. The Ramones' Blitzkrieg Bop is to be featured in a 30-second TV ad for Bud Light. A spokesman for the beer brewers told reporters the Ramones music was chosen because the band is representative of today's generation. It's 1991.
Well, they represent every generation. I mean, if you think about it, there's an advert on TV at the moment with the Ramones on it.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
What's that for without product placement?
I couldn't possibly say, mate. In fact, I can't remember. But,
okay.
I mean, it's funny, we've talked about this before, but Ramones T-shirts are available in department stores.
Yes.
And quite simply because people think that they look cool, and a lot of the people, as we've said before, don't know who the Ramones are. Some people do think it's a label, a clothing label.
Yeah. Absolutely, it's just a great logo. Axl Rose, still on US News, Axl Rose has hit back at director Oliver Stone's comment that the Guns N' Roses vocalist wishes he could be Jim Morrison. In an open letter to the Doors movie director printed in a US magazine, Rose declares himself offended, hurt and angry. Oh. Doesn't say whether, I presume that's his suggestion rather than the fact that he really doesn't sound like Jim Morrison.
Well, he doesn't, does he? I mean, the Doors had some good stuff, but Jim Morrison had a good, rich voice, didn't he? Whereas for me, I know that James Dean Bradfield said that he thought that Axl Rose had the best rock voice ever, and this was a while ago, patently. But for me, it just sounds like two cats having a scrap. But
each to their own. But it is a bit whiny. Let's face it. And the band's next album, due for release this summer, narrowly missed destruction in a fire at Levenhelm's Woodstock home, where the master tapes were restored. Ex-vocalist Robbie Robertson is meanwhile working on a new solo release for Geffen. The band in the early 90s, they weren't producing bad stuff, but it was just, the inspiration had long gone, and also Robbie Robertson had as well.
I didn't hear any of that material, the latest stuff. I mean, I don't even go to stage fright, really. It's music from the Big Pink is it for me, and I don't know too much beyond that, to be fair.
Okay, well, Cahoots isn't bad. There's some good stuff on there.
Right,
certainly.
okay.
Singles this week, got Terry Staunton reviewing Galliano, MC Hammer, Violent Femmes, Waterboys, The Pixies, which you've heard. Single of the week goes to Sinead O'Connor for My Special Child. Says the outspoken Miss O'Connor has fueled much tabloid fodder in her brief career, with every syllable being scrutinised, stripped down and carved in stone. There are many people out there who've got nothing better to do than wait for her to trip over her shoelaces. Praise be, therefore, that she shrugs off the cynics and continues to do what she does best, churning out incredibly moving and poignant pop. My Special Child is the best thing she's ever done.
Wow,
he writes.
some boast.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the album front, slim pickings really, but Blue Lines is out, so how can you ignore it?
We cannot, mate.
Midnight rockers, city slickers, gunmen and maniacs. All will feature on the freak show, and I can't do nothing about that. No. But if you heard what's mine, I'll sure as hell retaliate. Can free the world, can free my mind, just as long as my baby's safe from harm tonight. You can free the world, can free my mind, just as long as my baby's safe from harm tonight.
Serious, infectious, and dangerous. Friends and enemies, I find us contagious. I was looking back to see if you were looking back at me, to see me looking back at you.
Lucky dippers, crazy chances, seems to be moving fast. What happened to the niceties of my childhood days? Well, I can't do nothing about that. No. But if you heard what's mine, I'll sure as hell retaliate.
I was looking back to see if you were looking back at me, to see me looking back at
Can
you.
free the world, you can free my mind, just as long as my baby's safe from harm tonight. You can free the world, you can free my mind, just as long as my baby's safe from harm tonight.
Serious, infectious, and dangerous. Friends and enemies, I find us contagious, and they're spreading through your system like a virus. Yes, the trouble in the animation anxious. I was looking back to see if you were looking back at me, to see me looking back at you. I was looking back to see if you were looking back at me, to see me looking back at you.
But if you heard what's mine, I'll sure as hell retaliate. You can free the world, you can free my mind, just as long as my baby's safe from harm tonight. You can free the world, you can free my mind.
Massive Attack and Safe from Harm from the Blue Lines album. From Manchester, we've got Mark Riley. From where, Bob? Liverpool, can we say?
Yorkshire, mate. Yorkshire.
I always get them two mixed. No, but you're originally from Liverpool, aren't you?
I am, yeah, but I'm a Yorkshireman now. I'm a Scouse Yorkshireman. But anyway, let's not get into that. Anyway, don't think I mentioned that before. Anyway, so we'll look at the NME here, 25th of May, 1991, and the NME are devoting most of the, well, at least half of the issue anyway, to a huge celebration of Bob Dylan because he was 50 in this year.
Right.
And so it comes up with there's pages, for example, of interesting things you never knew about him. There's reproduction of an old NME questionnaire from April 1965 where he's asked for his miscellaneous likes and he says trucks with no wheels, French telephones, anything with stewed prune in the middle. And then on the quote from obviously always a contrary figure, there's various stories here. Backstage at the band's final concert, The Last Waltz in 78. Neil, 76, wasn't it? Neil Diamond storms off stage past our hero who's about to go on. He says, "You're going to have to go some to follow me. I was great." And Dylan says, "What do you want me to do? Go on stage and fall asleep?" Oh.
Woo! I mean,
Dylan,
it's a bit follow that. It's a bit pathetic, that, isn't it?
It is, I think so. Andy Warhol apparently gave Dylan one of his expensive Elvis Presley prints once, and Dylan swapped it for a sofa. And his least favourite song of 1972 was Neil Young's Heart of Gold. He said, "I used to hate it when it came on the radio. I'd say, damn, that's me. If it sounds like me, it should as well be me."
Right.
Which is unusual, isn't it? Because Neil Young was around the same time when America had Horse with No Name, which everybody said was Neil Young, and it annoyed Neil Young no end.
Oh, yeah, I tell you what, they're all getting upset, aren't they?
They are. Various fans as well. So you've got, for example, cricketer Bob Willis. Do you remember him? Great fast bowler.
Bob Dylan Willis. He was a massive Dylan fan, so that's where this is going, is it?
Exactly. Age 16, by Deepole. He was obsessed. He said all the kids at school had the Beatles or the Stones on their pencil cases. He said, I had Bob Dylan. So at the age of 16, in 1965, by Deepole, he changed it to Robert George Dylan Willis. And he said he was just obsessed. And he said every album that came out was an event for him. He said my greatest success, however, was one day hearing my dad doing the washing up and singing along to Mr. Tambourine Man.
Well, it's funny, I didn't mention this to you, but I did mention it earlier on in the week. So I played I Want You by Bob Dylan, and it's from Blonde on Blonde, and I only just realised that Blonde on Blonde, Bob.
Yeah, of course. I didn't know that.
No, most people haven't recognised the fact, so I'm going to take all the credit for it. I hope Bob Dylan drops me a line.
Oh, I'm sure he will. The two loudest things I've ever heard are a freight train going by and Bob Dylan with the band. That's a quote from Marlon Brando. And there's one here which sort of sounds unkind. I'm guessing it probably was meant unkind, but it sort of reveals stuff about the early Dylan here. From Echo Hellstrom, who's his girlfriend from his adolescence, it says. People would laugh and hoot at him, and I'd just sit there, embarrassed, almost crying, she says. He always had the amplifiers too high. I guess he lived in his own world, because apparently the audiences booing and laughing didn't bother him in the least. And it just reminded me of the story. I was talking to John Sebastian quite a while ago, and he was saying how in the early days in Greenwich Village, you'd see Dylan walking around. He's just like this sort of slightly comedic ragamuffin character, just wandering about, sort of bumming gigs all over the place, and nobody really took him that seriously until all of a sudden,
Well, there's all of the guys that you know better than I who were working in Greenwich Village who were all the real idols to Dylan, weren't they? And of course, he pretty much usurped them all within the space of a year, didn't he, of going there?
Yeah, he did. No doubt about it.
Ramblin' Jack, was it?
Well, he'd do his early gigs, wouldn't he? And he was often billed as the son of Ramblin' Jack because he essentially aped him. And Ramblin' Jack was a sort of copy of Woody Guthrie as well. So it's all interlinked.
Yeah, Fred Neil as well. Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Definitely. On the film front, 1991, you got Guilty by Suspicion, starring Robert De Niro. I shudder to ask, have you seen this?
No. I've seen all of the Robert De Niro films that I want to see, and two of them are my favourites. I have to say that The King of Comedy is one of the greatest films ever, and obviously Raging Bull is fantastic, and The Godfather. So there's plenty of them there, but there's a lot that I don't want to see as well, and I've not seen that one.
Yeah, I mean, talk about the King of Comedy. You have seen the Joker, haven't you? Sort of, Joaquin Phoenix. Well, the end of that is a homage to King of Comedy. When he's kind of he's chasing both ways at the top of a corridor. It's almost a direct copy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Well, he's in it, isn't he, De Niro? So there you
go. Also, so you got Guilty by Suspicion, which is about McCarthy witch hunts, which I remember seeing at the pictures at the time. It's quite understated. And also Goodfellas, which is out this week. It says here, already film of the year in most people's lists. Martin Scorsese returns to the mean streets of New York for a docudrama on the life and times of Harry Hill, who longed to be a gangster. It's also a great rock and roll film, he says, thanks to Scorsese's spot-on use of exhaustive soundtrack material from over 3 decades, top-notch performances from Ray Liotta, De Niro as a menacing mobster, and Joe Pesci, of course, as a unhinged psycho henchman.
I mean, it's quite kind of comedic in itself, his performance, but it does steal the show, doesn't it, Pesci?
It does, definitely. Gigs this week, you got Kraftwerk at Manchester Apollo. Is that the one you went to, 91?
No.
Okay, Jonathan Richman at the Mean Fiddler in Harlesden. You've got Blur, Ipswich Corn Exchange, Happy Mondays, The Farm, The Lars, Northside, and The High at Leeds United FC, Elland Road. Pixies, Ride, Cud and the Boo Radleys at Crystal Palace Bowl. You've got Spiritualised at the Warehouse in Leeds. The Stairs at the Cosmos Club in Liverpool. Pulp at Wolverhampton Poly. Michael Chapman at Leeds Duchess of York. You've got Echo and the Bunnymen at Leicester Poly. And Teenage Fan Club we mentioned before at Brighton Zap Club. And Hawkwind headline a special 12-hour Technical A Dream all-nighter at Brixton Academy. Also appearing Radical Dance Faction, Dr. Fibes and the House of Wax Equations, Moonrise and the Chemistry Set, plus a special surprise act due on at 4:30 in the morning. I should have done some research, but I didn't, so I don't know who that is.
I don't think anybody would have known at 4:30 in the morning. Everybody would have been in bed by 12:30. Surely, Bob.
Absolutely. Public Enemy on the back page here. You've got in Manchester, Arthur Baker, DJ, was a little miffed when he was refused admission to a late night club, even though he's supposed to be doing a DJ spot. But I'm Arthur Baker, he yelled at the doorman. We don't care if you're Cheryl Baker, they replied. You're not coming in without an invite.
Yeah.
Julian Cope, meanwhile, was playing at the International in Manchester last week. He thought it'd be a bit of a wheeze to clamber into the tiny space between the ceiling and the polystyrene tiles in the club during his song Safe Server after successfully squeezing himself into the gap. Guess what? He couldn't get out again, so they had to stop the gig, and guitarist Donald Ross Skinner fetched his Stanley knife and cut a sizable hole in the polystyrene to free the poor boy.
I'm pretty sure I was at that. Yeah, I mean, it's weird, isn't it? You think you would remember so vividly, but, no, but I think I was.
Oh, right, okay, what an event. And apparently Mick Head of Shack sticks the sandwich to his guitar, which I don't believe at all, but it says here it's true.
Well, we know that the NME around about that time, and a few years previously, was quite mischievous, wasn't it, and would make things up, so who knows?
Yeah, so 2 people we've mentioned already, Sinead O'Connor and Jar Wobble.
Right, OK, mate. Well, that means we've got to go, doesn't it? So thanks very much, Bob. We'll see you next Tuesday night, and thanks to everybody involved in the programme tonight. And, yeah, we'll see you on Monday. So we're going to leave you with Jar Wobble, Invaders of the Heart, and Visions of You. A nailed-on classic. Cheers all, bye-bye.
Complete and the heart and mind they meet.
Wiley, BBC Six Music.
And shut the door on your way out.